It's wonderful having a son on the homestead to help out. That's the biggest deal of all, when you have your family right there to help.
It all started with a wheeze. Not dramatic, not fitting for a man who had conquered 70 brutal Alaskan winters. Just a small, stubborn hitch in Otto Kilcher's breath, one so quiet, so easy to ignore. But by the time anyone took it seriously, it wasn't just a cough. It was a quiet collapse, a failing artery inside a man built to withstand the harshest forces nature could throw at him. Discovery's cameras never caught the pain pills hidden in his coat pocket. They missed the sleepless nights, the grimaces he swallowed down. Only Otto would try to repair a broken tractor and a failing heart with the same wrench. But that's just the beginning. The real tragedy, it was in his journal. Raw, unfiltered, words meant only for himself, and never for cameras. The myth, the man, the frontier. It all began with a simple wheeze. Not a dramatic gasp. Not the kind you'd expect from someone who had survived 7 decades of Alaskan winters. It was just Otto Kilcher, in the quiet of his world, a little off balance when he thought no one was watching. But by the time the truth came out, it wasn't just a cough anymore. It was a slow, inevitable collapse, an artery ticking down like a bomb in the chest of a man who could outlast a snowstorm. And here's what the show never told you. While Discovery aired scenes of Otto wrangling cattle or welding in the snow, they never showed the pain meds tucked away in his coat. All the restless nights. The stolen glances between Otto and Charlotte when he tried to power through one more chore. Only Otto could tackle a broken tractor and a failing heart with the same damn wrench. But the true heartbreak wasn't in the diagnosis. It was what he wrote in his journal afterward. Words we weren't meant to see. Words that'll change how you look at Alaska, the last frontier, from this day forward. Otto Kilcher, the 6th child of Swiss-born pioneers Yule and Ruth Kilcher, was born on a homestead just 11 miles outside of Homer, Alaska. Picture it, no flashing lights at 6 p.m., no warm shower after battling the frozen elements. Just you, a wood stove, and the wide, unforgiving Alaskan tundra. That was Otto's life, self-sufficient, grid-free, surviving with nothing more than a wrench and determination. The word around Homer was clear: if something broke, Otto could fix it. Be it a tractor, a leaky roof, or even a moose. But even the toughest log cabin isn't immune to wear and tear. Fast forward to 2016, and Otto's legendary stamina hit a wall. Hernia surgery. He admitted later that, as the doc stitched up his groin, he could actually feel the tugging. Imagine that, Otto, the man who's wrestled wild oxen in the middle of a blizzard, reduced to wincing on an operating table. What if he'd just ignored the pain? What if he'd pushed through as he always had? That moment changed everything, and we'll dive deeper into how it reshaped his world next. We all have to endure a little pain, right? But this glimpse into Otto's vulnerability hinted at deeper, more painful struggles lurking beneath the surface. As the seasons wore on, viewers noticed Otto slowing down during chores. Those small, fleeting winces suggested that the man who could outstubborn a snowstorm was facing challenges that no amount of duct tape or grit could fix. Then came the moment when the cameras stopped rolling. Otto's body finally gave out, and he was thrust into one of the hardest health battles the last frontier had ever witnessed. Have you ever been caught in a storm so fierce it felt alive? That's where Otto Kilcher found himself when his world turned upside down. One moment, he's the rugged man who can turn scrap metal into a working tractor. The next, he's flat on his back, buried in snow, with an ox's hoof pounding into his ribs. Blood seeps through his coat. The cold steals his breath. Each gasp is like shards of ice cutting through him. And out there, in the middle of that whiteout, no one on set, realized they were witnessing the scene that could have been his final one. Now, think about this. Trudging home through a blizzard, trusting that frostbite and hypothermia are your only enemies, only to be trampled by one of your own beasts. Otto might have been Alaska's unbreakable handyman, but in that moment, the frontier pushed back harder than anyone could have imagined. And here's the kicker. Discovery's cameras were rolling. Until they weren't. The promo for season 11's "He Might Die" still gives me chills. Imagine Otto, bundled in layers of oilskin and wool, stumbling through knee-deep drifts as the wind howls, ripping at his hood. The first shot catches his boot sinking. The second cuts to paramedics slipping on ice, scrambling toward a motionless figure. No voiceover, just the storm's fury and the frantic radio call: "We've got a patient in critical condition." You won't believe what happens next. The teaser cuts to black, but by the time you flip the channel, Discovery's already pivoted to Jules singing in the cabin. The only thing more surreal than that teaser, how they buried the truth. Out there in the whiteout, Otto made a split-second decision that nearly cost him everything. An ox, blinded by the blizzard, charged like a runaway train. I've seen wrecked tractors take softer hits. His thick coat, his gloves. Useless. That beast's hoof slammed into his ribs with enough force to shatter bone. You could almost feel his breath catch, as if the wind had been yanked out of him, before he crumpled to the ground. And what does Otto do? He tries to push the ox off his chest. This is the man who'll wrestle a rusted engine before he admits defeat. But this time, the frontier's wildest mechanic met his match. The ox won round 1. By the time Otto's raspy cries sliced through the whiteout, hypothermia was already creeping in. Just minutes before, the homestead's wireless had died. No SOS. No backup plan. It was a neighbor, spotting a smear of blood in the drifts, who radioed the crew camp. What followed was part daring rescue, part reckless gamble. EMTs in fur-lined parkas charging through waist-deep snow, slapping frozen gloves against their coats, desperately trying to pry him free from the ox's hoofprints. They wrapped his fractured ribs in gauze, and because this is Otto, they duct-taped a makeshift splint to his leg. Every second, ice crept closer to his lungs. When they finally got him onto a sled, the helicopter's rotors spun like a funeral dirge, lifting him toward the only place that might keep him alive. And in that moment, Charlotte's world went silent. You could see it in the camera feed when they cut to black, her hands fluttering against the hospital corridor wall, her face bathed in fluorescent light. Meanwhile, the boys, Ivan and August, did what modern families do in a crisis. They texted the world. "Dad's hanging on," wrote Ivan, "but it's touch and go." Fans flooded the replies with prayers, theories, and even rumors that the show would turn this into a stunt. Meanwhile, Otto lay on a gurney, tubes in every orifice, drifting between two worlds. If he blinked hard enough, he might have woken up back at the homestead, wrench in hand, thinking the whole thing had been a bad dream. Yet when He Might Die finally aired, none of that reality made the cut. No raw hospital footage, no 5-hour surgery. Instead, we got a quick card on screen. Otto is receiving medical attention. End of story. Not a word about the ICU roommate who gave him morphine nightmares. The ox mauling, the season's darkest twist, was buried like a bad chapter Discovery didn't want us to read. Just like Otto himself, more legend than truth. He survived the snow. He survived the beast. He survived the helicopter ride. But when he got back home, survival came with a cost. One that nearly tore the Kilcher clan apart. After Otto's collapse, the homestead fell into a hushed uncertainty. Trucks sat idle where his toolbox once rested. The sound of his hammer on metal was replaced by a heavy, uneasy quiet. No one dared break it. Not until Ivan and August finally did. You could see it in their eyes. Ivan was tossing fencing wire over his shoulder like he'd done 1,000 times, but slower now, more careful. August was pacing the herd, calling the cows by name, as though it might keep the fear out of his voice. And yeah, there was fear. You could hear it when Ivan muttered, "Dad would have had this herd through the pass by noon." Not angry, just scared. Because this wasn't just another day on the homestead. This was the first time Otto wasn't there to lead the charge. And suddenly, these two grown men, his son and nephew, looked more like boys standing in their father's shadow. Ivan flinched when a steer kicked at the gate. August's hands trembled, trying to keep the line moving. And every sound, the clank of metal, the bellow of a cow, felt like an unspoken question no one wanted to ask out loud. What happens to this family when Otto's not the one holding it all together? Inside the cabin, Charlotte stared at her phone, wearing that same haunted expression she'd had the day Otto never walked out of the whiteout. Then, in her steady hand, she typed a confession for the world to see. "This episode will be difficult for us to watch and relive. It's the actual blood and tears of a devastating time for us on the homestead, when Otto's life was hanging in the balance," she wrote. Each word was a blade slicing through Discovery's polished facade. No filters, no fade-ins, just raw truth. You could almost hear her voice tremble through the screen, every word thick with unspoken pain. This wasn't a promo, it was a raw cry for empathy, a rare moment when the iron-willed matriarch let the cracks show. But the real story, that played out far from the cameras. On TV, everything looked golden, smiles, successful hunts, and triumphant titles like "The Kilcher Clan Carries On." But online, on Reddit and fan forums, whispers painted a different picture. Some said Ivan and August weren't just fixing engines. They were jostling for screen time, each trying to prove he was the new backbone. "It feels scripted," one post read. "Like they're filming the last one to bite his tongue." Others claimed hot mics caught tense exchanges. "I can run a cattle drive without Otto narrating every move," Someone allegedly snapped, words that mysteriously never made it to air. The gossip spread fast, feeding a fire that turned a family's private turmoil into public entertainment. Back in Homer, the sun glinted off cafe windows, but inside, voices lowered over chipped mugs. "Did you see Charlotte's post?" one neighbor asked, stirring sugar into their coffee. "She's been through hell, twice." Across town, a petition quietly gained traction, urging Discovery to give the Kilchers space as Otto recovered. Locals passed updates like heirlooms, texts about ambulances at the airstrip, tense faces in her windows. Otto wasn't just a TV character anymore. In a town like Homer, fame and real life blur until you can't tell where the script ends and the story begins. Producers were suddenly on a knife's edge. Otto's struggle brought viewers, but Charlotte's unraveling, that brought risk, of backlash, of accusations, of crossing a line. So, they adapted. The cameras backed off just as Charlotte buried her face in her hands. Then, like nothing happened, they zoomed in on August cracking a joke about a busted milking machine. Otto's labored breathing made the trailer, his cough sharp and haunting. But Charlotte's tearful plea on Instagram, edited out, and while audiences watched Ivan swing a hammer or August mend a roof, few caught the pain behind their smiles. The family turned iPhones into lifelines when the crew had to evacuate. Still, even that footage was whittled down, just raw enough to stir hearts, but polished enough to pass as reality. By the time Otto shuffled back onto the porch, leaning on a cane, his grin weary but defiant, the homestead had quietly changed. Ivan looked more grounded, August stood a little taller, and Charlotte, she welcomed him home like a woman relieved, but weathered. Not broken, but reshaped. The tools Otto left behind forged more than fences, they reforged his family. They stepped into his shoes and glimpsed the weight he carried alone. For viewers, it was both inspiring and frustrating, watching resilience unfold, edited into something neat and consumable. Some fans felt drawn in, emotionally tethered. Others recoiled, feeling manipulated, haunted by what was shown, and what wasn't. Because this was never just about farming or frontier grit. It was about what happens when the pillar cracks. What happens when reality TV starts showing too much of the real. With Otto on the sidelines, the rhythm of the show faltered. And fans began to wonder, is this the end for Otto on Alaska, the last frontier? After his near-fatal accident, something unsettling happened. The man who built the homestead started vanishing from it. Not all at once. Not with a send-off, a tribute, or a tearful goodbye. Otto didn't vanish in drama. He faded the way reality TV quietly retires its veterans, letting absence replace closure. According to Screen Rant's behind-the-scenes report, Discovery had already begun what insiders call a phased exit strategy by season 11, a tactic they'd used before on Deadliest Catch when Captain Phil Harris's health declined. Otto's screen time didn't just drop, it plunged. From over 22 minutes an episode to less than 5 by mid-season 12, according to IMDb breakdowns compiled by fans. Soon, even his appearances felt ghostly. Old footage of Otto chopping wood from season 8 reappeared. Voiceovers were dropped into scenes where he wasn't even present. But Reddit sleuths caught a telling glitch. In episode 9, Otto's reflection briefly flashes in a truck window. One problem, that model hadn't been sold in Alaska since 2015. The message was clear, the show could mimic Otto. But the man himself, he was already gone, and fans felt it instantly. In season 11's first 3 episodes, Otto showed up in nearly 80% of scenes. By mid-season, he was barely visible. Discovery claimed they were honoring his recovery, but Screen Rant sources whispered otherwise. Creative differences. A new direction. If that sounds familiar, it's because it is. The same playbook was used on Deadliest Catch. Slowly edge out the legend, then memorialize him when it's too late. The Kilcher family's official statements didn't stop the speculation. When Charlotte posted that Otto was taking time to heal in March 2023, fans dug in like digital archaeologists. Within hours, her post drew 23,000 plus comments analyzing her phrasing. Some noted she deleted earlier posts showing Otto's rehab. Distractify later tied the deletion to network pressure and sensitive timing. Was it a pause, or a quiet goodbye? Reddit lit up with side-by-side breakdowns of Charlotte's captions before and after the accident. "We'll rebuild" became vague quotes about letting go. Then came Atz's Father's Day interview with Outdoor Life, meant to honor family, but raising eyebrows. Dad's always been his own man. Whether that includes the show anymore, who knows? A cryptic quote, dropped just as season 12 entered hiatus. Otto's sparse cameos only added fuel. Fans counted just 47 seconds of new footage between episodes 4 and 6, mostly voiceovers layered on B-roll of his silent workshop. But here's what the edit left out: Otto's retreat wasn't just about healing. Screen Rant revealed Discovery had been testing a next-gen Kilcher narrative since Season 9. Leaked production notes from 2021 show producers tracking Ivan's engagement stats reportedly triple Otto's among younger viewers. Reddit users unearthed casting calls seeking younger, rugged, Kilcher-adjacent talent. The implication: Otto's injury didn't change the plan, it sped it up. Ivan's homestead tutorials, August's solo wildlife segments, they weren't just storylines, they were auditions. Insiders say Discovery ran focus groups, comparing Otto's gruff charisma to Ivan's more relatable dad persona. One source told Screen Rant they wanted a clean handoff. Otto's accident forced their timeline. It mirrored Deadliest Catch's pivot after Phil Harris, a painful, pre-scripted shuffle. But can Alaska, the last frontier, really survive without its stubborn heart? The data doesn't lie. Season 11's premiere, branded as Otto's triumphant return, pulled 2.1 million viewers. Discovery celebrated. But by episode 6, with Otto's role shaved to a blink-and-miss 7 minutes, ratings crashed 23.8%, dipping to 1.6 million, per IMDb's metrics. That's a steeper fall than Deadliest Catch endured after Captain Phil's death. Fans didn't take it quietly. Reddit flared with boycott threats: "No Otto, no watch." A Change.org petition demanding his return hit 15,000 signatures in weeks. And here's the kicker: Nielsen data revealed the youngest viewers, the very demographic Discovery hoped to court, were the first to tune out. Ivan's slick tutorials and viral-worthy hacks couldn't hold them. Ivan's solo segments tanked, 19% fewer social shares than Otto's gritty tractor repairs. As one YouTube commenter put it, "I don't want polished. I want Otto cursing at a frozen engine for 20 minutes." Behind the scenes, Alaska, the last frontier, faced an identity crisis. Producers reused Otto's old voiceovers to patch episodes, and fans noticed recycled audio from Season 8 appeared during a Season 12 cattle drive. When Discovery tried shifting focus to August's new generation storyline, Instagram engagement plummeted. The message was clear: you can't replace a legend with algorithm-driven content. So, what happens when an icon like Otto Kilcher starts to fade? Is it retirement, or something more tragic? Is it evolution, or the erosion of what made the story real? Otto Kilcher didn't need cameras to conquer the wild. In 1941, he arrived with just a rifle, an axe, and 160 acres of Alaskan land. Otto inherited that grit, fixing fences by hand and reading the weather. Ironically, Otto laughed when Discovery first pitched the show, but 28 million viewers later, the show turned their independence into a dependence on its spotlight. By Season 3, the show started scripting conflict, even having Otto rediscover problems he'd already solved. The ox incident didn't just break Otto's ribs, it exposed the cracks in the show's polished facade. Otto's accident shattered the illusion that TV could capture the real cost of frontier life. Otto's mechanical skills were survival, not entertainment. He could rebuild a bulldozer with dental floss, a skill earned through 70 Alaskan winters. Even after his injury, editors couldn't hide his trembling hands. Losing Otto wasn't just losing a character, it was losing the last living link to Yule's vision. The threats to the Kilchers weren't just internal but environmental and economic. Since 1950, Homer's winter temperatures have risen 5.2 degrees Fahrenheit, and permafrost is melting. Tourism has become an invasion, with Instagrammers leaving trash near the Kilchers' once private salmon streams. The 2021 Tongass exemption cleared 38,000 acres of nearby forest, and now, the homestead faces luxury rentals and a dwindling water supply. Ironically, while #homestead life trends, subsistence hunting licenses have dropped 14% since 2019, and Otto's beloved Mulchatna caribou herd has declined by 28%. Discovery's biggest mistake wasn't the show, it was when it aired. Between 2018 and 2023, Alaska lost 14% of subsistence hunters, largely due to Otto's absence as a mentor. Season 12's Homestead Hacks featured TikTok-style fire-starting tricks, which the Juno Empire called Ray Survival, far removed from Otto's authentic knowledge. Discovery re-aired Otto's iconic beer can carburetor fix but cut the footage showing his trembling hands post-accident. Fans noticed, wondering if Otto's knowledge would survive him. Reality TV's illusion collided with real-life erosion. Otto wasn't just a TV star, he was the last bridge to real frontier survival. The next generation's promise now feels haunted. Levi's vow to carry on Otto's legacy is in question. especially in a world where 62% of subsistence permits go unused. The Kilcher homestead now faces warmer winters and collapsed ice caves. The last frontier is becoming a museum. Look, but don't touch. As the cameras roll, the wilderness Otto knew is disappearing faster than the ratings. And it all raises a single question. What do we owe our storytellers when their lives become our entertainment? Otto's near death wasn't a plot twist, it was real. The footage of him bleeding out in the snow, with a drone overhead, was cinematic but still suffering. When producers greenlit that shot, we became complicit. It wasn't staged. Otto didn't fake the pain. His injury turned the show from an adventure to a tragic reality TV spectacle. The line between documenting and exploiting blurred, and his accident became a ratings boost. Rewatch the episode, mute the music, and see Otto's trembling hands and fear. Reality TV doesn't wait for consent, it waits for ratings. Afterward, Otto changed, and so did the show. We owe him more than applause. We owe him a second look and respect for what it cost to entertain us.